on Skype with us right now. I've been waiting for this interview.
I want to say you've been waiting 10 years or longer for this particular interview. This is a monumental day in the history of A Mediocre Time, A Corporate Time with Tom and Dan, all of our shows. This is a big deal.
Probably took a world pandemic for this gentleman to slow down enough to have the time to do interviews. So on Skype with us right now, Travis Pastrana. How you doing, Travis?
Doing pretty good, guys. How about yourself?
Good. I'm, of course, under current circumstances as well as it could be. So my first question, Travis, and everybody's going to laugh at me. But
you know what? I'm not. I only laugh at you when Travis Pastrana's not on the line. Now that we're talking to him, I will not mock you incessantly for what's about to happen. But this is 10 years in the making.
Yeah. So about this, I try to figure when.
Maybe more than 10.
This was about 14, 15 years ago. So I don't expect you to remember, but it was in Orlando, and it was at Latitudes, and I was in a bear suit.
No.
And I know. You mentioned Latitudes already. It's going to be rough. But I was in a bear suit, and you came up. I was in the DJ booth doing my radio, shenanigans, and then you came up to me, and
Did you get hurt that day?
I may have.
He does remember you.
Do you remember Drunky the Bear?
Yeah, I of course could not forget
that.
He remembers. 100%.
I'm surprised because it's been a long time,
awesome.
but I thought you may remember only because I at the Do Action Sports
Are you going
Store.
to cry right now?
No.
You showed me a video of you crashing on a skateboard or something. The Do Tour. I forget, but there was a crash involved.
Yeah, definitely crash. I used to do a lot of stunts and ridiculous. I mean, obviously nowhere close to what you've done, but
now there is a theory here that his people might have told him this, and that he's just being really nice. Travis Pastrana, America's motorcycle sweetheart.
Yeah, right. But that's fine. I'll take it. I won't
Take
go
what
any
you can
further.
get.
I'm not going to push and be like, tell me what color my eyes were.
No.
I'll just take it as that.
Victory is a victory.
So first off, Travis, let's talk about some things you are doing because of, the stay indoors order and the situation we're in. Tell us about the stuff you're doing with iRacing.com and Subaru.
Now, I tell you, it's been really interesting because, my job is to entertain. It's Nitro Circus. We do live shows. It's racing cars in front of crowds. And when we can't do that, I went from being you do something really awesome 2 to 3 times a month as a job to being mediocre all day, every day, trying to do your best. But we
know where that feels.
I'm learning how to drive sim racing. I've always used sim racing and iRacing to learn tracks. It's really very helpful, braking points, shifting points, but never really took the time to try to hone in my lap times. I figured that would come later. I just needed to know where the corners were coming, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'd always been using iRacing since started NASCAR in 2012 or whatnot. But now I had Subaru called up, Yokohama called up, all my sponsors said, hey, we got to get back racing. We got to do whatever we can. It's now your job to go sit on your simulator and play video games. And I thought, man, this is a big change.
Yeah. And then with how accurate are the simulators compared to real world driving? I've always wondered that, how close can it actually be training wise?
Now you don't feel the speed in the sims.
Yeah.
So, and there's no, honestly, I've gotten to where I am in racing and motorsports in general because I'm willing to take more risk than the next guy. Calculated risk, but say, okay, I can wheelie into these whoops and go, I can jump this further. I can take something that no one else is willing to take. I can take that chance. Well, in sim racing, everyone's willing to take that chance. So really it takes me from being a pretty competitive real world racer to being fairly mid-pack in sim racing. So I'm working on trying to actually get better as a driver now.
I never thought about the edge that you have from just your
willing to take the risk.
Yes, I've never factored that in, but that's extremely interesting.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's even the playing field. Where now, a really good 13-year-old could you be just as good at these simulators.
Byron, the NASCAR driver, he's driving 24. He took over from Jeff Gordon. He was a sim driver his whole life. And when he turned 16, his dad's like, hey, we're going to get a car. What do you want? He's like, I want a Legends car, which is like a oversized go-kart. He goes in North Carolina, with Charlotte, which is like the top Legends car series. He beats, some of the top NASCAR drivers. Kyle Busch sees him drive, goes, man, you've never driven before? Puts him in his NASCAR Truck Series truck, qualifies pole, almost wins the Truck Series the next year, wins nationwide the next year, qualifies pole for Daytona this year, gets like 21 years old, and the only background that he's had is sim racing. And now he's dominating the sim championship for NASCAR, obviously, because he's well adapted for this time.
Well, that kind of racing, Travis, it seems like NASCAR and stuff, like it gets real technical to where the difference between braking a quarter second later or shifting like a half second, like it all gets whittled down to very specific, minute things.
Yeah, the details.
Yeah.
Well, NASCAR is interesting because, like rally, it's making the best of the worst conditions. You get one time to write your notes on, 200, 300 miles of stages. And it could rain after, it could snow after, it could get drier. The cars before you tear up the road or clean off the road. But in NASCAR, you're going around, for 3 hours, sometimes 600 miles, and just the same two corners. They call it four. I don't know where they get four corners in the oval, but
yeah.
Basically, everyone says that's the easiest part of racing. I'm like, the easier the race is, the more difficult it is to win. So you look at a driver like Jimmy Johnson. He won so many championships, 7 times, because he and his crew chief were there every morning at 5 a.m. I shit you not, they're in the race shop. They're talking over strategies. He's watching every single race that's ever happened there. He knows if a cloud comes over, what that's going to change the car, what adjustments to make, and how to drive it differently. And the driver that's the most studied is going to excel even over your guys like Joey Logano and Kyle Busch, who are the absolute most phenomenal drivers ever. Now, Kyle overcomes this by simply driving, 5 races a week. That guy's doing literally 150 races in a year, that's
nuts.
Like, it's just, he's got so much seat time. So you can do that a number of ways. But coming from me, where I was coming from motocross, NASCAR was the absolute, like, first lap around, you're like, oh, dude, I'm within a second of the best driver in the world. They're like, yeah, so is every other driver in the world.
Right.
Now that last 10.
Yeah. Now, how do you whittle that down? How do you detail that down?
Yeah. Just through like a lot of just study and specific little.
Well, we talk about it on the show all the time. Reps. It's just time spent. And when he says seat time, that's got to be. And just finding time sometimes to get in the reps would be difficult.
And Travis, I also want to hit the.
And it's expensive.
Yeah. Sponsors.
Extremely expensive.
It seems like there's a lot of politics and business behind NASCAR. Is that true? Like, it's not necessarily maybe who the best driver is, but a lot of who and politics and, like, who's got the most money?
No, straight up, if you're the best driver, you will make it up there. Like, even action sports nowadays, they're like, oh, well, how do I get to that level? Well, simple. If you do something that no one else can do, like the internet, man, just post it. We'll find you. But the same thing with NASCAR. Everyone's like, oh, well, no one helped you. Or they didn't give you. And I learned all about aerodynamics and drafts and wind and that stuff I'd never dealt with. But yeah, if a driver has a chance, if I had a chance to go behind myself or, Kyle Busch, I'm probably going to follow Kyle. It's no hard feelings. I'm trying to do the best I can for myself.
Yeah. Now, Travis, I want to. I've been following your career, your whole life, and
you were the kid that would go down to the motocross, a power sports store, and you'd buy the latest, whatever offering they had, or find some sort of.
I own all the Nitro Circus DVDs, and I've been watching you from your race career to the X Games, and I'm going to ask a lot of fanboy questions. I apologize, but
sorry. We just literally the sky just dropped out. I have never heard. I don't know if you can hear the thunder and lightning. And I'm in the shop, and I'm sorry. It's probably got really loud. The sky just fell on this in Annapolis, Maryland.
No, we hear it. I thought that it was your connection. I was like, oh, there's my luck at the connection. Just when I want to ask you the questions that I've always wanted. No, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, you sound great.
So back in 2006, at the X Games, you brought in a modified dirt bike to be able to do a bar spin. And I thought it was like awesome that you were trying to transition like the actual equipment in freestyle to do things that were not possible before, like the innovation.
It also sounded kind of stupid and super dangerous. You know what I mean? Like in a cool way.
And of course, those who follow you know that, I know that you got some flack for it, and some people are like, oh, that, but I appreciated the innovation in it. But since then, I've always wondered, like, it seems like in freestyle motocross, everybody's always used factory bikes and branded bikes, and no one's ever like come out with a completely custom bike for freestyle. Is there a reason behind that, or is it sponsors, or what's the reason someone hasn't modified their bike specifically for freestyle as far as like power and maybe a lighter bike and that kind of thing?
Tom Paget, his bike, and same Levi Sherwood, most of your top guys have the lightest bikes on the face of the earth, and they don't even need this big a gas tank. They can cut the seats. They can do a lot of really cool stuff. But if you're looking, like, even that bike was, it was about $200,000 investment.
Whoa. Oh my goodness.
And so, I mean, you got the frame and everything, and it's still broken half. So obviously I needed to spend more. And we got, most of it was covered through sponsors and stuff, but most people, manufacturers, they're going to want to build a bike that they can sell. So now they're selling to a market of maybe 100 people worldwide. It's just not a motorcycle that they can make their money back on. So it's basically the rider's investment. So that's what's so cool about Nitro Circus, working on safety and ramp progression. And now with the action sports going to the Olympics, everybody's coming to Nitro to say, okay, what's this bag jump used? How did you get it for Josh Sheehan that was on the incline? They use that for snowboarding and skiing now and everything. And it's so cool to be on kind of the forefront of, the safety, which allows us to actually go bigger as well. And for us, for Nitro Circus, we got to get the guys doing the biggest tricks that have ever been done. And they got to be back out there the next weekend or the next day, the next night performing and not get hurt.
So you brought up Josh Sheehan, and that was another question I was going to ask you, because when I watched him do a triple backflip at your house, I literally threw my hands up. I was like, well, I mean, that's it. I mean, how can you get bigger and more impressive? Like that,
ridiculous.
It was the most insane thing that I literally, I mean, even when I watched you do a double backflip in 2011 was amazing. But the triple, I was like, how can it ever be more than that? And so my question to you is there a plateau effect just from gravity and physics and the capability of the bikes and what you have to work with that we're reaching as far as, like, I mean, could there even possibly be a quadruple backflip? Is that something that even anybody wants to do? And are we reaching a plateau in just the physics?
Well, no, I mean, the physics. Sorry, I'm going to try to go to a different room that might be a little more insulated from the shop. There we go. Sorry about that.
No, all good.
Quite cool, as cool of a background, but might be a little better. Sorry about that. So Josh Sheehan, if you haven't seen it in person, you haven't seen it. Everyone says you got to see it to believe it. The takeoff ramp was 44 foot tall. To put that in perspective, at X Games for the Big Air, the takeoff ramp is 11 feet tall. So
that's a 4-story building,
4 times bigger.
Yeah.
The landing is 65 foot tall. He was going over 100 feet in the air. That's standing on the top of a 10-story building and landing on plywood. Now, granted, it's only a 40-foot drop to the top of the ramp, but that's still 4 stories to where he actually landed, doing 3 flips with a 250-pound, 450cc dirt bike over top of your head. Now, the safety on this was like, I mean, yeah, he pissed blood for a little bit, and he had some broken ribs and stuff, but it was really fairly good considering the magnitude that he was doing, and we learned a lot about safety and progression in ramps. But to get bigger than that is going to be very difficult. That was, in my opinion, a stunt. But action sports is going to progress because as the athletes get better, air awareness is improved, training is better, safety is improved, bikes get faster and lighter. This all taken into account, you can now start doing flips and spins and all kinds of technical tricks that we were never able to do in the past.
Yeah.
So when you look at the scooter riders coming in, as much as it pains me to say it, scooter riders have evolved the sports because they're able to get this air awareness on things that they can jump away with and not get run over by your motorcycle or smashed or broken as bad. So by the time they are 13, 14, 15 years old, they're doing double backflips, triple backflips, spins, everything else. So they're progressing at such a higher rate.
It almost becomes like you're a gymnast almost first, and then you take those abilities and apply them towards a action sport. Is that kind of where it's progressing to? Like, these guys are literally gymnasts.
Well, if you saw like Jagger Eaton and some of the younger kids that were coming a few years ago, these gymnastics parents, and they made a place called Kids That Rip, and they took a bunch of literally felt like China going for the Olympics. They took a bunch of these kids that were prodigies at a very young age in gymnastics and taught them how to skateboard. And at 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, they had 4 of the top 15 skaters in the world were under 14 years old. Now, can you imagine being Bob Burnquist and all those guys at the top of the ramp looking over? They actually put a thing up. You must be this tall to ride this ride. Because all these kids, they're so small, so their center of gravity is small, so they can spin faster. So it was almost cheating. I mean, not obviously, but they just took this gymnastics, and it's kind of like snowboarding. Finally, has caught up to skiing. The snowboarders always made fun of the skiers, but at the end of the day, I'm like, the skiers are doing so much more flips and spins. Yeah, it doesn't have the style and the flair. Maybe it's gotten more honed. But if you could learn that first and then add your own style, now you're talking.
So, Travis, you talked a little bit about stunts, and speaking of stunts and like first-time tricks and world records, a lot have been broken and made at your house. A lot of people have dubbed it Pastrana Land in Maryland. And I got a couple questions, because your house has become an icon in the action sports industry. Everybody into action sports knows about Pastrana Land.
It's constantly mentioned,
Yeah, and people like myself have watched it progress and grow through Nitro Circus DVDs and the original Nitro Circus. So my 2 questions is, first, how are your parents cool with all your friends coming over?
Like I could barely have a drum set.
And doing crazy things without them being like, hey, don't do that, because your friends are going to sue us if they get hurt. And so that's my first question. My second question is, how are you still able to do it in this litigious of a society? I'm sure, you've been very successful in your life and built this amazing brand. I'm sure you got lawyers telling you like, hey, don't put, like, you're putting yourself at risk having all these
more
people.
Halloween parties. So I don't know.
Yeah, so how has Pastrana Land been able to live this long without the lawyers shutting it down or
Good
people?
question.
Yeah, how does that work?
Well, actually, I don't know. I guess everyone's kind of watching. Like, if you can see this right here, this is the bunkhouse basically for Nitro Circus.
Yeah.
And it's pretty neat. Like, you come in here, like, this is all the room basically. I'm in the shop. This is the shop because my wife has officially kicked all of the Nitro Circus crew and all the Olympians and everyone training out of our house to come down here and stay here. But to ask why my parents let me do that. So at 14, I won the world championship and started making money on a dirt bike. At 15, I signed a pro contract, and at 16, I bought my own house. So,
Nice.
Well, I bought the land that they now call Pastrana Land. So technically, my dad's like, well, it's your money, it's your life. You're eventually going to be back here working construction with the rest of the family. So any day that you can wake up with a smile on your face, have a passion, work hard towards it, it's like ride that train till the wheels fall off.
Yeah,
so
man.
I just assumed at any moment I was going to get hurt, or something was going to happen, or I was going to lose everything, and I was going to be back with all my uncles working construction. And I just tried every day to make it the most fun and the best possible day I could have. And somehow, at 36, I haven't grown up yet. I do have a wife and 2 kids now, but my wife, she just won the world championship this last year, 2019, for vert skating. My kids just started kindergarten, so now I got to stay home a little bit more. But they've just been on tour, and just living with this passionate group has been really cool.
Now, Travis, I was going to ask you about your dad, because he's been prominent in the Nitro Circus shows and videos from back in the day.
The one that you showed me. It was horrifying.
Well, he broke his pelvis out in Costa Rica, jumping off a boat. But your dad, he comes off like a real man, the former Marine, correct?
Oh yeah, drill sergeant in the Marine Corps. So
Yeah.
I was brought up with be respectful of everybody and don't be lazy. And other than that, I was pretty good.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how much did your dad and his mentality, and just because he seems like an awesome dude, but also seems like he is a, a real man that, doesn't take any shit. How much of your dad is, based on how you grew up in your life now and your discipline and your ambition?
Both of my parents were very different, honestly, but they definitely molded my life. I mean, my dad, so my grandfather, let's take it back to the beginning here, a little bit of a tangent, but he was Golden Glove boxer in the Navy. And my uncle, who was my dad's brother, was quarterback for Denver Broncos. And all his other brothers were Division I, wrestling, boxing, football, lacrosse, that kind of stuff. I was the runt of the family. So the only way to prove myself was to kind of, I needed a motor. My legs weren't quick enough. I wasn't strong enough to really hang with the rest of the guys, but I could do more flips and that kind of stuff. So, and my mom, on the other hand, was an academic type. I don't know how they ever got together in the first place. Love them both. My mom is still a school teacher, inner city Baltimore.
Right on.
Yeah, very, very different kind of growing up with that. But one was very strict on education and the other one on athletics. So that combination really molded me to be kind of the crazy man that I am today.
Now, speaking of your dad, when he did break his pelvis in Costa Rica, can you tell that story? And was that the last time he stopped messing around with you guys, or was like, I can't do this anymore?
Yeah.
So my dad was, if you say you're going to do something, you do it. So every time someone was over the house, and he would talk crap. Seth Enslow and all the guys that I know you've heard of from Krusty, who were over here trying to learn backflips. Well, my dad comes down. It was 3 days in. Mad Mike Jones, Seth Enslow, all the guys from Krusty Rover. They couldn't get a backflip around. So my dad literally, he's on his Harley. He's got his shirt unbuttoned. I don't know. He never buttoned his shirt up for any reason. Pulls out. I mean, still his collared shirt. Got all his work stuff on. And he gets off his Harley. He's like, you expletive guys still haven't done a backflip yet? And they're like, well, it's called Harley. Let's see you do it. So he jumps on Seth's bike, launches a backflip into the foam pit, still has his phone attached, clip-on flip phone, attached to his hip belt pocket, shirt unzipped, walks off, gives them all the finger, gets on and takes off. He didn't walk for a week after that because his back was so sore. But he always stepped up to do whatever he needed to do. Was crazy enough to do it and just enough skill to get it done usually. So we were in Panama, and the boat was doing 80. And he's like, you sissies, back in my day, I'd have jumped off. And then one of my friends was like, oh, put your money where your mouth is. So he's like, oh, crap. Well, I kind of called it out. So he jumps out the boat. One leg went one way, one leg went the other. Being the tough guy that my dad is, he swims back to the boat, gets in, he turns pale white. We're like, you okay? He's like, I don't think so. And then he passed out in the boat. So we got him. Luckily, there was a Johns Hopkins hospital down close to there.
God.
Almost bled out. He was 6 days intensive care. Literally, they barely fixed him up. And of course, being the supportive son that I am, knowing that he would have wanted that, we went ahead and left him down there because we needed to film the next day in Jamaica. And he's like, you left me in the only place they don't speak English. He's like, McDonald's speaks English? He goes, how can the most educated place down there, nobody spoke English?
Well, speaking of close calls, Travis, I'm going to do this thing that everybody on our show and our listeners makes fun of me of, ask you a question and then attempt to answer it. But I was going to ask you, and I'm sure everybody that you do interviews with ask you, what was your closest call? And because of all,
so you're going to attempt to guess his closest call.
I'm going to attempt to guess it just because I've seen most of what you've done in your life, and in your documentary 199 Lives, which I suggest people watch because it's
really good.
It's crazy what you've accomplished.
Thanks, guys. I'll pay you later.
But there was a point where you were you jumped a motorcycle into a canyon and base jumped off the motorcycle, and that to me, out of everything you've done, and I've watched a lot of it, but to me seemed like the sketchiest thing you've ever done, because I was like, whoa, because
it wasn't not sketchy.
Yeah,
it was pretty darn sketchy.
The fact that you were base jumping with a motorcycle and how little the margins were from life and death, And just from what I know about, like, and people could look at like skydiving without a parachute and all the other stunts you've done, and it seems risky, but to me, that looked like the sketchiest thing you've ever done. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah,
All
you
right,
are.
he knows.
An interesting fact about that is everyone's like, why aren't you wearing gear? I'm like, well, it's base jumping. You either die or you live. And I managed to half open the chute just enough to where it opened to slow me down to like 50 miles an hour before I tumbled down the side of a cactus-filled cliff with only board shorts and a helmet on. I thought, wow, that was pretty stupid, among other things. But yeah, I'd say the closest I came to death was actually a skydiving. I was trying to open up super low down in Panama, and I was borrowing a friend's base rig. So I jumped out of a helicopter and opened up, and I got line twists. So I went into the waves.
Oh no.
Well, as I hit the water, I went to pull, like to cut away, and I realized that his chute didn't have a cutaway. Now there was a knife on it. By the time I just wasn't prepared. And that's where I learned a lot, to always be prepared and always think a worst case scenario. I was 18, 19 or whatever, just down there in Panama thinking this is the greatest thing ever. But when the wave caught the parachute, I went underwater for about 30 seconds where the parachute actually, it surfed. It got a hold of the wave and tumbled me. But the problem was when it stopped, I got wrapped up in all of the parachute, which is this huge, basically this thing that was getting sucked back by the waves. I got wire lines all around me. I can't move anything. And luckily there was about 10 surfers there that drugged me out of the water. I was basically about to drown in the waves, not being able to, just caught up in the lines in a complete tangle. So that sucked.
Do you ever think about that, Travis, where is that kind of the case, or it's like Steve Irwin, like of all the dangerous stuff he's ever done?
I'd always think it'd be the simple stuff.
Yeah, and it's a simple thing. Like, have you had conversations with your friends and other Nitro Circus people with like?
Because that was going to be my guess.
Yeah,
like,
it won't
the
be
simple thing.
Yeah, it won't be the crazy dangerous stunt. It'll be something I'm doing on my free time that I just, I didn't bring the knife to cut away my parachute. I drowned in the ocean.
Yeah,
that's how it's going to be, right?
100%. If it's something that's a 10 out of 10 on the danger factor, you have all the safety, you have the precautions, you got the medevac there, you got the best doctors, you have everything there, and you've gone through it in your head and you practiced and you're so dialed in. You know every possible thing that could go wrong and a way that you can get out of it, and you make that calculated risk. Now, not to say it's going to go right, but you know every possible scenario and you've prepared for it. The problem is, so you look at Shane McConkey, one of my all-time heroes, ski base jump guys. He just had an old kind of cutaway on his ski, and it didn't go right, but it was just something that caught him off guard. That was not a simple base jump, but something not that difficult. Eric Roner, a great friend who was actually there and helping us on that the base jump day. He passed away just doing a show into a golf course. But something simple that you just don't think of, gust of wind, and you're just not prepared for it. So I say the most dangerous thing that anyone does is probably driving with your mother-in-law.
Yeah. Statistically. Now, Travis, I know I got a couple more questions, but I know you got like 5 or 6 more minutes.
Of course.
Okay, cool. One question that I was always curious is like when it comes to electric dirt bikes, and I talked to the guys at Daytona Speedway about this, and they were saying they were actually preparing for like eventually Supercross, it all being electric, and they were talking about like what they'll do, like playing music in the stands for when there's no actually noise of the bikes. What's your opinion on electric bikes, and do you think that's going to be the progression, the natural progression of the future of racing and like freestyle and everything?
Well, I think all the manufacturers go on electric, especially with cars right now. I know Rallycross and Nitro Rallycross, pretty much every manufacturer, the Subaru, I think, is the last manufacturer that's making a sports car, or at least has one in the works that's going to come out that is not electric, of your Fords and your Chevys and Dodge, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not saying there won't be, gas-powered cars that are coming out, but all the emphasis for sure is going electric. For me, I like the fact that 90% of racetracks get shut down because of noise. I have so much trouble here. Even in my backyard, we got a huge area, but noise is the biggest problem and the biggest complaint with neighbors. If we can make this silent, all of a sudden, I think we can race more places. We can practice more places. More places don't get shut down. So for me, electric is not only going to help with the environment, but it's going to help the power as well. The torque is amazing. The new Nitro Rallycross, hopefully, I mean, we're being slowed down a little bit in production right now, but with all the manufacturers and everything. But the goal is 2021, we have 6-round series. You guys are actually first to hear about this, so it's not announced yet, but 6-round series that's going to be electric. They're trying to do it with small SUVs that go 0 to 60 in under 1 second.
God damn. Holy moly.
That's the same like G-forces in the first 0 to 60 as basically a top fuel dragster, and you're doing it with an SUV. You can get 0 to 100 and back to 0 faster than any street car on the road right now. Like, pretty much as fast as a Corvette. And you're doing this in an SUV. So all the guys are like, oh, electric, that's not, that's not motorheads. No, but if it's faster, that's going to be pretty awesome too. So for Nitro, our job is to make electric cool. And if they're as fast as they're saying they're going to be, and we can get that much traction out of those tires, it's going to be absolutely amazing to watch.
Yeah, 100%. And also, to your point with the noise, I've said this too, with now, like, I've seen the electric dirt bikes, and they're still a little heavy right now, but it'll get better and better. But I grew up riding dirt bikes and four-wheelers and stuff, and
three-wheelers. We're obsessed with three-wheelers.
Yes.
Yeah. And to me, it's like you couldn't go ride in the woods here in Florida because it would be on someone's land or government land, and they'd hear you. So that would be the biggest heat up. With electric bikes, you can go ride the forests of Florida all day long, and
there's no noise pollution. We always think of the pollution coming out of the exhaust pipe, and sometimes you don't even think about noise pollution is a thing.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, NASCAR, and in long durations is going to be difficult to get that much power out of the vehicles for such a long period of time, like in the recharge stations and that kind of stuff. There's a lot to be done, but I think that's definitely the direction of the future.
Okay, so we all watched the Evel Knievel tribute on the History Channel, and I got a question for you because from watching you and your career, your whole life basically, I was telling people when you were going to attempt this, and I was like, man, Travis can easily pull this off. And then I started thinking, I bet you a lot of people that have followed you are thinking that same thing and not thinking of how much risk it is to jump that type of motorcycle. So was it easy for you, or were you disappointed that a lot of people thought that it was too easy for you because they didn't take into account the bike you were jumping and how hard that is to jump?
No, that was a tribute event. I mean, it was actually way more difficult than I thought it was going to be. I took it on as, hey, History came to Nitro Circus and said, we need something that has history. No pun intended, but to basically bring in, your dad's and your grandfather's generation with your generation and the next generation of scooter riders who want to do a live stunt. And Dave Mateus looked at me and said, dude, we have to do a tribute to Evel. So we called up Evel's family. He's like, all right. They said, yeah, we'd love to do it. Be a part of it. I was like, awesome. I got all 3 of his kids signed off on it. I said, where should we do it? And we started thinking of all these places. And I was like, oh man, we got to jump Caesar's Fountain, and this and that. And every Greyhound jumped on board. Caesar's was right on board. And I was like, man, careful what you asked for. That was kind of almost too easy to get it lined up. So we're now jumping 3 jumps instead of 1. I got Roland Sands to do the whole kind of backlog with the bike. And yeah, it's actually a little heavier than Evel's bike, probably a little faster, same displacement. But we had to add a lot to it because the bike actually kept breaking. It just wasn't made for those types of jumps. But for me, and I wasn't going to be the one to ride, but I said, look, this looks like something fun. Like I just told my wife, I'm not doing any more big stunts. And then this came up. I'm like, but I get to get a picture jumping Caesar's Fountain.
Yeah, you kind of got to do that.
Sign me up. So it was something like there wasn't any money involved for it. I just thought it was so cool to be able to tell a story where I had so many literally fathers and grandfathers tell me that's the first time they sat down and watched a whole TV show talking where they got to tell their kids and grandkids kind of the Evel Knievel story and where they were and where they saw one of his first jumps and, how action sports started. And then for the kids to be able to tell their grandparents, man, they're like, oh yeah, back when men were men. They're like, no, dude, they just shifted to now it's a sport. You got scooters, you got skateboards, you got BMX, you got X Games. And I just thought it was such a cool opportunity for me being a part of Nitro Circus to really shine a light on kind of who started it and kind of bring some generations to understand where action sports started and where it's gone.
Yeah, that's super interesting because I assumed, I was like, oh, they dropped off a dump truck full of money for Travis to do these jumps, but you're telling me that you opted to do
like
it.
a passion project.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, well, that was something where it was either I had an option. You either are the guy that gets to do it, and you make sure that even if it's windy or rainy or not that it's gonna be rainy in Vegas, but like whatever happens, I know that I don't want to tell someone else you have to jump because this is a legacy for Evel Knievel, and Evel would have jumped. You know what I mean? But I can, for myself, I'm like, I know I can get out of this stuff. I know what my limits are, and I know that if you take this on, this is the risks. If the wind's blowing 100 miles an hour, that bike breaks after the first one. It's not going to make the next one. Evel Knievel at Wembley told the people, he goes, hey, my bike's not fast enough to make this jump. We got the angles wrong. But you know what? Y'all showed up, so I'm jumping. And I'm like, we're going to have it planned out. But if that's the case, like, you got to go. This is an Evel Knievel tribute, you know? Yeah. So I wanted to be that guy. And luckily everything worked out. Weather was good. And it's cool.
Well, speaking of that, Travis, is there something that like Evel Knievel had, like you have, like a lot of people that do these amazing stunts?
I don't think Travis has ever beat a man with a bat for writing something weird about him. I hope you haven't. I don't think you have. But you seem a lot nicer, maybe. Just,
What is that thing, Travis, that you guys have that make it so that you could sit on a bike, you could look at something and you can and say like, hey, there's a high probability that I am not going to make this, but I'm going to push past that and go and do it anyway. What is that I feel that all stuntmen have to do this business?
I blame my dad. It's my best asset and biggest detriment. His big thing was if you say you're going to do something, you do it.
Yep.
So the first time I said I was going to do something and had to do it, I was probably 10 years old, said I was going to do a jump to one of my heroes, Guy Cooper. Knew on the takeoff I wasn't going to make it, but I was like, I said I was going to do it. Landed, literally crushed the wheels, bent the frame, the whole front end broke off the bike. My dad's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I said I was going to do it. And that mentality, I think, is what Evel was. Evel was a showman, but he was an actor that was willing to back it up when push came to shove. So I think that's what a lot of modern action sports has lost is the showmanship. You got to think of X Games at the beginning. It was Metal Militia, Brian Deegan, world domination by 2000. The Flying Hawaiian, Clifford Adam Tomte, Kenny the Cowboy Bartram, like Mad Mike Jones.
Yep.
Like everyone had their catch, their hook. There's something that set them apart. It was almost like WWE or WWF or whatever back in the day. Now it's become a sport, but you got to realize it's still a hobby. We're still making a living on kids' toys, and we're still having fun for a living, which is a pretty cool place to be. So I think if we brought back a little of that Evel Knievel showmanship and we're able to have the accountability to say, you know what, I said I was going to do it, I got to do it. The world will be a scarier and more exciting place.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of toys, I know that you got your line of Nitro Circus action figures coming out.
That's going to be dope,
Monday,
man.
May 25th. And tell us about where people can get those.
Man, I tell you what, I knew about the making of them, but I don't know anything about that, so I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, they'll be out Monday, May 25th. I'm sure you'll be, putting it out on social media, and anybody that follows you will know when they come out. I'm sorry, I'm just making sure to hit the things that your agent told me to think of the interview.
Dude, I got to be more prepared for these, man. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And dude, I tell you what, it's really cool to be able to go into stores, and when your daughters or my two daughters, they see an action figure, they roll their eyes. They're like, Dad, it's you again.
Well, speaking of that, Travis, I was going to ask you too, and you mentioned a little bit about your wife didn't want you to do these big stunts anymore. Has having kids, because I've got 2 boys,
I got a daughter, so we get it.
A 4 and 5-year-old, and so has it changed you at all as far as the amount of risk that you're willing to take or any of that? And I know this kind of is a dumb question because you're always doing a calculated risk for everything, and you're good at calculating risk, obviously. But has there been anything that your wife has put the kibosh on, maybe like base jumping? Because that base jumping seems to me the most dangerous.
Risky,
yeah. There's not a lot of Grand Canyon moments where you hit that in between part. It's usually pass or fail.
Mm-hmm.
I liked base jumping because it didn't matter how skilled you were. You step off the cliff and you're going just as fast as anyone can possibly go.
Yeah.
So you're at that max level. But for me, after losing some friends and realizing that I'm not good enough to be pushing the envelope in that sport as far as I was, my wife drew the line pretty much when we first started dating at wingsuiting. I was about to go over to Europe and do some wingsuit stuff, and she's like, "Look, I don't want you to wingsuit." I was like, no, I'm not doing proximity flying. She's like, "I know you're not now, but if you learn how to do that, I know the next step. You never settle for what you've done or do the same thing again. You always have to go up." So for me, since Eric Rohner passed away, base jumping has been, and even skydiving in general, I've really cut back on it. And the more you cut back on it, the less you can do that pushes it, just because you're not current, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah,
Totally
the
makes
less
sense.
training you have, therefore it makes it even more dangerous. The less you do.
Well, our very good friend Andy has said that to me. He's like, he's sort of addicted to it, and he's one of the best in the world. And he says you got to just keep doing it.
And I think Travis met Andy Malchiotti over there in Lake Elsinore. One of my buddies, but he's the same way. He's had too many friends with wingsuit and proximity flying, and he's like, it's really one tiny fraction of mistake, one zipper comes off. I mean, then it's dead or alive. There's no hurting yourself. It's literally, and it's fascinating. But man, people are passing away too much with that sport. But Travis, I know I'm going to let you go because I could talk to you forever, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this interview. And it's really cool to see you with your daughters, and just watching you and your career. It's cool seeing you as a dad, and also I'm jealous that your daughters can ride dirt bikes better than I can. At this point, they got the genes.
Well, Drunky the Bear, it's good to see you again.
Yeah!
Take it easy, dude. Be safe. Hope your family's safe and all your friends, and take it easy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, bud.
All right, man. There you go. There is Travis Pastrana live from Pastrana Land. And,
Was it everything you wanted it to be?
Well, I honestly, I wrote down so much.
Oh, I saw. He came in here.
Yeah. I was over prepared.
No. You were great. Why not over prepare for something you've waited a very long time for? I was pretty proud. It was all typed up. I didn't even know you could type. That's damn impressive, man.
Well, I was thinking about but there's too much. The guy.
You have to congratulate Samantha on pulling that off too.
The
real hero here.
Thank you very much, and I know that you're working hard to make that.
I make dreams come true.
This guy didn't even come to your wedding, and you do nice
I
stuff.
know.
What are you gonna do for me?
Right.
I can't wait till I get my interview. I get to interview
All
Jesus
you gotta do
Christ.
is write something on a dry erase board, and apparently I can make it happen.
Well, I didn't even know it said Travis Pastrana. I thought it said Taco Bell Pastrami. I didn't even know what it said in there.
I mean, how many false pizza party promises can I
I know I'm never
before it's
getting it.
meaninless?
It's
It becomes where it's like I don't even want you
Means nothing.
to offer
You
me
gotta
anything.
do something horrible to yourself now. I feel like you should have to go like in the lobby and put something in your BH or something. Like,
Why would I do that?
Torture yourself. Well, that was fantastic. Well done,
I'll get
y'all.
you another one in another 10 years.
I guess that counts as our third edition of Quarantine Cribs.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
So we've done Mike Busey. Then we did Seth Petrozelli, and then Travis Pastrana. We've done now. When are the bad ones gonna happen?
We got Big Tim this week.
Yeah, Big Tim's on Wednesday. It's getting real sad.
Well, I was gonna ask him to show us around it because his house is iconic. He was in his garage that I've seen so many times, and all these like there's skate park.
When I saw that, I got a little freaked out because I thought he'd be like at like I don't know, his agent or an office or something. I didn't know he was gonna be in the Pastrana Land thing.
Yeah, he's got all his bikes from the X Games.
There's some hanging in the
yeah.
I was like trying to geek out and look at stuff.
You know, but it's like I know we should go, but it's like I'm always skeptical with interviewing someone that you've watched and you're a fan of because it's either
it could ruin it for you.
It could ruin it, or
that's what made it better. He's authentic.
He's a nice guy, and I knew that he was gonna
I didn't know he'd quite be that nice.
Yeah,
he's like a little nicer than I even thought he'd be.
Yeah, apparently he's like the.
By the way, he didn't need to do this at all.
No, he did not.
No.
He should be spending time with
and
his
he gave us a lot of time.
Family and stuff.
Yeah,
he gave us 40 minutes. That's insane. Well, hey, congrats, man. Well done, Sam. And I guess
we'll see you later.
Yeah, bye.